getting even more sick than they already are. And rather than the conversation being focused on what the healthcare system did or did not do, they choose to look at that patient and run down the things that the patient did wrong. So I have an example for you. I have a couple of examples for you. First example, way early in my nursing career, I was a brand spanking new nurse. Okay, brand new. Like, I was so excited. So excited. It was when I used to be excited about wearing scrubs to work. I hate scrubs. You'll never catch me as a doula wearing scrubs. I hate wearing scrubs. But I was really excited about scrubs at this time. Okay, so I was brand new. And I'm working in this hospital, and and there's this woman who was a frequent flyer on this unit. At this time, I was working in a med surge / telemetry unit. So people who have had, who have medical problems like diabetes, high blood pressure, things of that sort. People who have had surgeries and they're coming out of surgery and recovering from surgery. And telemetry takes care, is where we're monitoring people's hearts, those who we suspect may have a heart attack or have had a heart attack, and so they're being monitored after that. So that's the unit that I was working on. There is a woman who was a frequent flyer on this unit. She had diabetes. She was non-compliant across the board. She didn't want to do anything. She didn't want to take her medicine. She didn't want to take her insulin. She didn't want to eat right. She didn't like all those things, right? All those things. And not only did she have those issues, but she was just mean. Like, she was mean. She would come to the hospital and it was like she had a vendetta out against the hospital. I'm telling you from my standpoint at that time as a nurse. And she just, she'd come in, she'd make whoever was her nurse, whether she got the nicest nurse or the meanest nurse, she'd make their day hell. She was just mean, ornery, just, kind of an angry, miserable type of person. But this woman had diabetes. And so she was at the point, at this stage, she was at the point where she was at risk of having to have some limbs amputated. And so that was the conversation that they were having with her and with her son, who was like her next of kin, the person that helped take care of her as much as he could. And so they were like, we're at the point now where you're going to lose some limbs if you don't start course correcting and being compliant and, taking your medicine and exercising and doing all the things. And so it was interesting, but in that hospital visit, it was like something clicked and she got on board, and she got on board like full throttle. So I don't know if it was her son. I don't know if the fear of losing legs was the issue that was what it took for her to get on board, but suddenly she was on board. So then they were doing the diabetic education with her. They were doing, everything that they needed to do to be able to send her home and know that she's got this down and she's going to do it. She was in it. She was in 100%. Well, she went home, and a few days later, she came back into the ER and she had a heart attack and she died. And so the word got back up to us on the floor that I worked on that she died, and we were just all flabbergasted because we were like, dang, like she really left here as if she was going to do the right thing. And initially our first thought was that, she went home and gave up and just decided it wasn't what she was going to do. She didn't want to do it. And that was the end result. Later on, come to find out that the prescription for her insulin was written wrong. And she had received, at this point, I don't remember what the dose was, the incorrect, but it was a fatal dose, basically. So the physician wrote the dose wrong. The pharmacy did not catch it. She went home. She was compliant. She gave herself the wrong dose of medication. And she wound up having a heart attack and dying. And the reason I'm sharing this story in this section of they will kill you and tell your family it was your fault is because what they allowed her son to believe was what we all initially believed, which would be easy to believe because for as long as she had been coming to that hospital, she had been wholly non-compliant and inappropriate on most days. But her son was, his son had relayed that she was in gear. And at some point, I don't recall how the error was caught or exactly when the error was caught, but the error was caught. It was brought to the attention of the physician who made the error. It was also brought to the attention of the nurse. And so that's how we got the information because nurses be talking. So it was brought to the attention of the nurse who gave her discharge orders because they had to go back and, do the investigation and all this stuff. But my point is, none of that information was given to her son. You hear me? They will kill you and tell your family it was your fault. They allowed her son to believe that his mother was likely being non-compliant and that's just what happens when people are non-compliant. I'll give you another example. I've given y'all this example before. I've talked to y'all about when my appendix ruptured and what they sent me home, and go back to episode 3 and you'll hear that whole story. But when they sent me home, I could have died. I had to come back to the hospital. I spent a week on IV antibiotics. And so once they all kind of figured that they had, that it had blown over, they sent a doctor in to tell me that they really couldn't figure out what was wrong with me when I came in there the first time because I didn't give them the correct symptoms for what an appendix rupture is. Gaslighting. Do you see what I'm saying? They wanted me to believe that it was my fault that they didn't catch what they were supposed to catch. And what I had to remind that doctor and tell him to go back to his team and tell the rest of them was that I came in and I said exactly what I felt, the way that I felt it. And the only error was on the physician who neglected to ever examine me. He never touched me. He never put a stethoscope to my lungs or to my heart, nothing. He assumed that I was either faking or lying or drug seeking or something. And so they did not give me quality health care. The only reason anybody was able to figure out what was wrong with me was because I had to bargain with that doctor to order the test that I knew would figure out what was wrong with me. I should have gotten paid. Damn it. So that's what I'm talking about. That is what I'm talking about. When I first learned of the maternal health crisis, because when I was working in OBGYN in the hospital system, I was not aware that this crisis was happening. Now, I knew that Black women were being mistreated. Yes, I saw that every day at work. Hell, I was being mistreated as a nurse at work, as a Black nurse at work, okay? That story, my appendix rupturing, that happened to me in the hospital system that I worked for. Like, the people knew that I was one of them. And that happened anyway. And so I called when I learned of this maternal health crisis. I was just like, what is going on? And how are the numbers so high? And what? Like I was working in there thinking we were doing a good job. And then I come outside and I was like, what the hell? And so I called a few of my doctor friends, the doctors that I had worked with, the excellent doctors that I know, those that, taught me so much, that I learned so much from. But I called a few of them and I was just like, hey, like, what's up with this? What's going on? What'd I tell you? What'd I tell you they were going to do? I told you already. Pop quiz. I told you exactly what I'd always known to do, or of us to do in the medical system. Well, if you don't eat right, if you don't exercise, they're not eating the right foods, they don't come to all their prenatal appointments, and so it becomes this patient blame game, as opposed to figuring out within the system what could be done to make this better. They will kill you and tell your family it was your fault. What does that sound like to you? Like, you have to put these things into think about what that type of behavior looks like in your everyday life. You have a problem with a friend, your mother, your cousin, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. Okay? You have a problem. And you say, friend, cousin, mother, sister, there's a problem here. I am not okay with the issue that is between us. And then your friend, sister, cousin, mother says, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have a problem, but you keep coming up with these negative attitudes, and you keep coming up with these, you're always whining, you're always complaining, do you see where I'm going with this? That's what's happening. They're turning a blind eye. They're dismissing you. They can't be bothered because as far as they're concerned, ain't nothing wrong with them. They're good. So whatever problem you have, that's on you. You caused that problem. That's what's happening. That's what's happening in the healthcare system today. It's narcissistic as fuck. Okay, next one. I always tell you guys, you cannot walk into the hospitals all willy-nilly. I like willy-nilly. I don't know where I came. That's something, I don't know if maybe my mother used to say that. Somebody used to say that. But I like it. You can't walk into the hospitals all willy-nilly. What do I mean when I say willy-nilly? What I mean when I say willy-nilly is like just deciding, oh, I'm going to go to the hospital to have my baby, and it's a safe place because people say it's a safe place. I'm like, are y'all reading or watching the news or do you hear there are people out here telling you they killing folks, and y'all just like, oh, but it's a hospital and they're doctors and they're nurses and they have to care for us, right? Like, they wanted to be doctors since they were 8. And that's what doctors do. They care for people. And so I know I'm going to walk into this hospital and be in the best hands, and I'm not going to read anything about my condition. I'm not going to brush up on any information. I'm not going to ask questions because I know that they're just going to do everything right and everything perfectly. And if there is a problem, then I can just sue them and become a millionaire. Walking in the hospital all willy-nilly. Walking in the hospital blindly trusting that any of the people who just happen to be on a shift the day that you walk in there 100% care about you, your individual self. And again, I'm going to just give this disclaimer one time. I know there are good doctors. I know there are good nurses. I know that there are excellent doctors. I know that there are excellent nurses. I know. I used to work there. I know. However, when we're talking about this healthcare system, don't nobody up there give a damn about individual you. And that's the point that I need y'all to understand. You as an individual, you as an individual